early on still here in the DapperTails franchisee interviews, but definitely one I'm excited to have today. Shane Martin of Greensboro, North Carolina, who I guess you could probably say is the definition of a success story in franchising. So Shane, give me a little bit of your background and tell me about what led you in life to start looking for a franchise.
I'm 30 years deep now in manufacturing space. Spent most of my time in industrial manufacturing. Now I'm in some more building materials manufacturing, but just a long career of steady work, good work, management, leadership work. But I was always looking for something different, right? Something I could do on my own. Entrepreneurship's always been something that's excited me. So started looking at franchises years ago as an opportunity to possibly, bridge that gap between my professional career and retirement, and then possibly something that I could transfer later in life to maybe my children.
Gotcha. And what were some of the initial franchises and stuff that you had looked at, and why weren't those a good fit? And what was it about Dapper Tales that you came upon that made it right for you?
Yeah, so my wife and I are both professionals. We both we enjoy our careers, and we knew that we needed something that wasn't going to consume all of our free time in order to launch and be successful. So a lot of the franchise we looked at had significant upfront investments. And as we dug into some of the granular details of those, it was also a fairly large time commitment right up front, which was for us in our professional lives just wasn't something that we could commit to um, up front. So Dapper Tales offered us, you know, a fairly low cost of investment, and then the upfront work to put in to be able to be successful and launch was something that we felt was manageable with our careers.
Gotcha. And you had mentioned previously, something you could pass down to your kids. So had you, your wife, your kids, or anybody in your family had experience inside the dog grooming industry or mobile pet space at all?
Not necessarily dog grooming, but my daughter is a veterinarian tech, right? She works for a vet hospital, so I had a little bit of insight into the market as far as what it looked like for from a dog grooming perspective. But outside of that, none of us really had any experience in pet grooming other than owning our own pets.
Right. Yeah. Which I mean, that's how a lot of people end up getting into it because they can't find someone to groom their pet or they're not happy with what they have locally. But can you walk me through that process a little bit of, when did you start? How long did it take you to get started? What was your initial conversation with, whether it was Chris or Emily or the Dapper Tales team? And what was the moment where it like clicked that this is right for you and you guys decided to pull that trigger?
Initial dialogue started with Chris and Marquetta. Um, One of the things I guess for us, I've always been a numbers guy, right? So I wanted to understand the numbers, understand the business and the revenue stream, what it was like. Haven't been in manufacturing and leadership roles my whole career. The numbers are important to me. So that was kind of my initial thoughts about it. As I dug into it more and more, and I started understanding the details, and really started understanding the way that they approach the business and the groomer, and how they take care of the groomer, and how that's the most important piece of this. I really started getting interested in that, but then also just understanding as we started moving further down the path, and we started talking to more folks and understanding the market um, that was available in our area as far as the demand, it started to become more and more appealing as like, hey, not only can we do this, we think that we can be pretty successful doing this. So I'd say we started in late 25, really kind of seriously talking about moving forward. Um, we launched our first van in April, um, and we just launched our third van this week.
Wow, that's pretty crazy to be able to move that fast. So within 3 months, you did a van a month, which is pretty rapid growth. You had mentioned, your current career and being in some of those leadership roles. So I'm sure you've done some hiring in the past, but how did you go about hiring your first groomer or your manager, and how important was that to the business?
I would say going in, I didn't realize how important it was. I mean, I knew it was important. That first groomer, that lead groomer, it was going to be an important role. But now, 3 months in, I realize how critical that role really is to the
Mhm.
business. DapperTails was helpful in that, and the fact that they have a large network of folks that they talk to. So helping get me introduced to that network to where I could start talking to some groomers and some candidates was super helpful. And that's how we end up get going with our lead groomer, who's been amazing, huge talent. And then, from there, once you get into that network, the groomers know groomers, right?
Mhm.
And they talk. And if you got a groomer that's being successful and they're enjoying what they're doing, they're going to tell other groomers. And that's been a great help as far as recruiting second and third groomers.
So when you were doing that hire in that interview, what were some of the traits? Let's say I'm a franchisee who's just started. What were some of the traits and characteristics that stood out that you knew that that was the right first hire?
Experience. So you want somebody that you're not going to have to train how to groom, right? He had a
Mhm.
lot of experience grooming. Um, he had drive.
Mhm.
So it was apparent from the interview that not only did he want to come work for Dapper Tails, he was interested in growing Dapper Tails. He was interested in having groomers reported to him. He was interested in multiple vans, right? Those are kind of attributes that appealed to me as a franchisee wanting to grow the business as well as I want a team player that's wanting to do the same. And those are the things that stood out when we interviewed him.
And as the business has quickly grown, how did his role start and what does it develop to? And what was the, separation of you and your family's role versus his role when he first got started?
I would say when we started, it was very much um, all hands on deck, right? It wasn't like, oh, here you go, you're the lead groomer, take it and run with it, right? We were helping answer phones, we were booking appointments. He was doing the same. We didn't want him having to be answering phones while he's grooming pets, right? So we put a lot of energy in there up front. And now as we've gotten larger and we've all gotten more accustomed to using the systems and more efficient with using the systems. He's taken a little bit more of that role on with regards to booking appointments and rebooks, and now with a couple of groomers working for him, he takes the lead with those groomers. So the second and third groomers call him directly when they have questions or when they need help with the van or whatever the issues may be. So he kind of takes that lead role with the other groomers.
And how do you go about, retaining somebody like that? Or how did the Dapper Tales team suggest that, when you get an A plus rock star, type groomer, manager, etc., how do you go about keeping those people on board?
I think he's got to feel or she's got to feel like they're part of the team.
Mhm.
Um, we include him in when we're making decisions and we're strategizing about markets and where we should advertise and how we should advertise. We include him in that conversation. We bring him along for those discussions because he's got the experience in the industry, right? He knows what's important, what's not important, and we lean on him a lot for that. And he's appreciative. He wants to be a part of the business. So I think that's critical is keeping him a part of the business. He feels like he's part of the team. His decisions and his input matters. Those are huge.
Yeah, and then you bring a good point there as far as marketing in general. Having been in this industry 3.5 years myself, I don't know that I've ever seen anybody be able to scale as fast as you have. So, what were some of those tools for you to go from one van in April to three vans just 3 months later that you found effective in marketing your business?
I don't know if I mean, Google LSA has been a huge tool for us. We've leveraged that pretty heavily, especially right at the beginning. And then each time we launch, we increase the funding for our Google LSA to generate leads. I would say the biggest thing for us is when you have people reaching out, you have to respond. You have to be there to
Mhm.
answer the phone. You have to respond to the text messages because in this industry, they're just going to call the next person, right? And if they answer the phone, then they'll likely get a booking. So, really hitting those phones, answering the calls, responding to text messages has been important. We have a Facebook and an Instagram presence. Uh, you know, that hasn't generated as much as some of the Google has. but we do
Mhm.
have those presents as well. We've gone to some dog parks. We've done some advertising there. We parked the van at events. We encourage our groomers to use the van. You know, if it's a day off and they want to go to the park, hey, bring your van, right?
Yeah.
It's a traveling billboard, so that's been helpful. We get a lot of calls where somebody said, "Hey, I seen your van in my neighborhood," or "I seen your van at the Wendy's," right? Um,
Right.
so definitely that is a huge tool for marketing as well.
And how do you manage that with the groomers? Are they taking the vans home? Do you have a central location? Like, how do you monitor the maintenance of the vans themselves?
So they take the vans home. They charge them at their home. They refill the water. You know, they maintain them there. We do monitor mileage, so we check in pretty regularly with them on mileage, and then you know, at some frequency, we're checking in on the van itself, right? How's
Mhm.
the coolant levels? You know, what's tire pressure like? And we keep a pretty close eye on that. Our vans are pretty new, so the maintenance is pretty low on them currently, but that's something that we'll be working with them on with regards to hey, when do we need to get an oil change scheduled? When can we work that into your calendar so we can get that done?
Gotcha. And when you mentioned earlier on, the importance of answering those phone calls or texts, I think you hit the nail on the head. I know your family's kind of been a part of it, but how did you delegate or decide or make a system for answering those phone calls quickly and responding to those customers? 'Cause I think that's a great piece of advice for anybody in general that's coming into this industry.
Yeah, so for us, we all work, right? So trying to figure out a cadence for the phones was one of the things that we worked on early on. We were clumsy for that first couple of weeks trying to figure it out, but we finally did figure out, you know, like, hey, on this day, you know, my wife is off work at this time. She can take calls. In the mornings, I might be able to take calls. Afternoons, when my son gets home, he'll jump on the missed calls or the voicemails that we haven't gotten to yet. He gets those going. So kind of all have our piece there with
Mhm.
regards to making sure that everybody's getting a call back, getting a text responded to, an email, whatever it might be. And then the groomer, you know, throughout the day, he's taking calls as well. He's responding to text. It's really a team approach.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool to see that the groomers themselves are willing to hop in and do that. Like you had mentioned, the importance of making them feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves and not just treating it like it's a job. And I think a lot of times people don't realize the how good of a living that you can make as a mobile groomer, especially if you have somebody like yourself over them that cares about them as a human being and not just as an employee. When you were doing your research, obviously the Greensboro area is close to you, but how did you realize that the need there was so heavy? What kind of background research did you do, or was it just the inability to find someone to groom your own?
So obviously I have my own pet as well that whenever we needed to groom them or groom her, you know, we would get a lot of groomers that say, I'm not taking new clients, or hey, it's a month before we can get you in. Um, I mentioned my daughter works as a veterinarian at a veterinarian hospital, so she had insight into their own groomer and the challenges that they're facing trying to get pets groomed as well. And I reached out to groomers. I called around, said, "Hey, you know, are you taking new clients? What's the lead time on a groom?" Just to try to get a feel for it. Um, and it was pretty obvious early on that there's definitely a market there. Um, and then the mobile grooming piece of it, you know, think about all the calls that we get with people that are tired of taking their dog to a salon, and they're just looking for an easier, more convenient option to use. Um, and we just get a ton of those calls. So it's been pretty exciting to see just the shift in mindset, people looking for that convenience.
As you've kind of captured your market in that area, obviously client retention and rebooking is important. So, what type of standards did you implement, or did you receive, training wise from DapperTails that you guys have been able to keep in place to ensure that those customers keep rescheduling and coming back that allow you to keep growing while retaining the clients you currently have?
Yeah, obviously the rebookings are crucial, and that adds some level of stability to your business when you've got that rebooks month after month. So we definitely push that. DapperTails pushes that. But I think above all, really, it's the experience that the customer or the client has with DapperTails that's probably the most important. So you want that customer telling their friends, telling their neighbors about the experience that they had with your business, because that's not only going to drive rebooking, it's going to drive new bookings.
Mhm.
So one of the things we really drive with our groomers is that it create that experience that they don't want to look for somebody else, right? They want to come back to Dapper Tails. And then when you have created that experience and you know you have a customer that's satisfied, right? Push for that Google review. That Google review is critical. We get a lot of calls saying, "Hey, like we read your reviews, really good reviews," and that gets business as well.
And how do you have your groomers entice them for that, or is that something you guys do on the back end, or is there like a small gift or something? Because I've found a lot of companies or just maybe groomers in general aren't comfortable asking for that review, even when they've done a good job and the customer is satisfied.
We make it pretty easy for them, and we've got some little, almost like postcards with a QR code, takes them straight to the review. And again, so you don't have to push the sale of the review. It's really easy for the customer just to scan that. It takes them directly to the page. You want to do it in the moment, right? When their dog just come out, they love the way the dog looks and the way the dog smells. The dog's happy. Um, and that's when you present them with that card, and we have pretty good luck with that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's a good idea too. The doing it in the moment seems to always seem to get them a little bit quicker, especially when you're standing there because it's a lot harder to say no that I'm not going to do it when you're standing there with the card and you've just provided a quality service. And that's I think a good idea too for anybody that's a franchisee because with dog groomers, you're going to have a lot of different personalities. Some may have the gift of gab, and others might just like to work alone with the pet. I think that postcard type makes it an easy transition, regardless of the personality type that may be working that van for you that day.
Yeah, and I'll
But
say that
go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say Dapper Tails has done a good job of making a nice portfolio of branding media that you can use to help build some of those tools for your groomers, and even just from our marketing standpoint in general. A lot of tools that they've already created for the franchisees to be able to use and leverage.
Yeah, I think that rolls into another good topic to bring up. What was the support that you and your family personally received from Dapper Tales, at the beginning, and then your ongoing support? And what about your staff? Where do they turn to if they need continued help or training, etc.? What does that look like within the franchise?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, and it's probably the case with any new business, and I'm not referring to Dappertail, but more just my family's experience running our own business. Right? There's a lot of things that we don't know. Um,
Hmm.
Not necessarily with the franchise itself, but just with being a business owner. So that part for us, we did a lot of researching, trying to understand, hey, well, what do we need to do to run a business, right? But then once we got going down the path of launch and all that stuff, I'd say the support's been pretty strong. But in some cases, you don't know what questions to ask either. So as we've gotten month two, month three, we got a much more confidence in, okay, here's the person I need to reach out for this. Here's the person I need to reach out for that, right? Because you don't experience all the things you need to ask in the first week, right, or in the first
Right.
2 weeks, and you run into some snags along the way. But um, we've got pretty good tools, pretty good apps, and pretty good ways to reach out to the resources, and we're leveraging those as we need them.
And how important to you guys and how much has it shown through that, Chris and Emily aren't just a large conglomerate that bought up mobile grooming, that they actually are invested and do it them and have done it themselves? How much has that helped as far as those questions that you guys had?
Yeah, I would say just in general with the way the business is structured and supported from a technology standpoint, the way the apps interact with everything, it's really set up for a groomer, right? It's really
Mm.
set up around the groomer, which I think is important. I don't know how somebody else could have done that without knowing the industry, without having worked in the industry. So it's definitely, you can tell it was intentional in the way that it's structured and the way that it's supported, which is huge. And they've been very accessible, right? If I need to ask Chris a question, I can text him. He'll probably respond in the next half hour, probably with an answer, right? Or maybe shoot me a quick call. So it's been very nice to have access to that level of support.
So with your initial vision for what this was gonna be when it took off, what did that look like? And obviously, this probably exploded faster than you imagined. How did you shift your strategies, or how did you adapt to handle the rapid growth that came your way?
So we treat it. My family and I treat it as a true business, right? We meet every month. And we sit down. We talk strategy. We talk about performance. We talk about where we're doing well. What could we do better? Um, and then we talk about, hey, what does it look like for the next 6 months? Where do we want to be at the end of the year? How do we get there? And even doing that, it's growing faster than what we kind of had set out for our strategy, right? So then it's kind of like, hey, we need to regroup, right? We're launching band 3 in 3 months instead of 5 or 6 months. So it's you got to set aside time to do the formal stuff as well. You can't just kind of fly by the seat of your pants, right? You got to have
Right.
make sure you keep the structure there, manage the chaos, if you will, and have a plan.
And when you mentioned, when you guys sit down and have those meetings, what were some of the things that have stood out that you would say that, from the get-go that helped you grow that you guys have done exceptionally well? And then what were some of the hiccups you ran into that, you guys had to solve for as you guys expanded and grew?
Yeah, I'd say we've done pretty good at the communication piece. Like I said, answering calls, making sure that we're getting back to clients, making sure that they're getting their answers or questions answered. I would say the piece for us is, we grew so fast that we probably spent a little less time making sure that our drive times were a little bit less in between our clients, because we didn't want to turn anybody away, right? It's like
Right.
we want every customer, and in doing so, we probably spent a little more money in gas and time early on than what we should have, in hindsight. But as we launched band 2 and now the third band, we've been a lot more intentional about how we're booking, where we're booking, utilizing the tools that are provided to us with regards to smart scheduling within the app, and leveraging those. And we've helped drive down some of that travel time in between grooms.
Right, which also, feed the bottom line as well when you see the gas prices go down. Now, do you have your lead groomer manage that weekly, or is that just something as the calls come in, you fit the clients based on, where other customers are located similar zip code wise? Or how do you guys go about managing that? Because I know that is a really key point in any business's success in this industry, but especially early on, because like you mentioned, you do want to service everybody, but there's also a point where it doesn't make sense when you're traveling too far between customers because you're just giving away money at that point.
Yeah, well, we've kind of tried to create zones, right? So each groomer kind of has a zone within the territory that we try to focus their grooms in.
Mhm.
And there's cases where it doesn't happen. You got a regular that's like, I only want this groomer, right?
Right.
So we may have a once a month that we're traveling a little further for that groom. Um, but for the most part, we try to keep them in their zones to reduce that travel time. And then to the meeting perspective, like we'll have a meeting with our lead groomer as well, and we'll talk about how should we zone the territory.
Mhm.
He's part of that conversation as well. Um, and we look about, hey, where are our calls coming from? Most of our calls are coming from, say, South Greensboro or North Greensboro. So let's have some overlap in those zones so that we're not having a client call and be waiting 10, 15 days for a groom. So we'll meet and talk with him as well and just talk about that structure and what that looks like. And
What do your groomers shifts look like? Are you, just running, each person 8 hours a day? Are you running 7 days a week? Or how have you guys structured that to take on the demand that you have?
so again, our lead groomer has been, I would say probably not the norm. He's very motivated. He's been working 6 days a week, and he'll work 10 hours a day, 11 hours a day, especially early on, trying to grow the business. He's
Mhm.
peeled that back a little bit. I've got another groomer that works 5 days a week at 8 hour days. And then the groomer we just brought on, she's a little more hungry. She's wanting to work 6 days a week, between 8 and 10 hours a day, Monday through Thursday, and then 8 hours on Friday and the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome, but I also think it speaks to your hiring. And you had said something to me when we had talked a while ago about having the need for another groomer, but hiring the right groomer. Why is that so important to not just fill the space, but fill it with the right person for you guys?
Yeah, we were talking earlier about what qualities do you look for in that first hire. Well, kind of that's what we learned right after we got going. It's like, what qualities do we need? And even listening to some of the other franchisees, I would rather go 2 weeks without having a groomer and get the right groomer than hire somebody and then be struggling a couple weeks later because you didn't hire the right groomer. So it's really critical, that you get the right groomer. One, from a quality perspective, they've got to be a good fit from a customer interaction perspective. Um, and then two, generally it's a groomer, like I said, the network. So my groomer knew this groomer through his grooming friend network, if you will.
Mm,
So we knew that she provided good quality. She had a good portfolio of dogs that she's groomed, and she was hungry. She was eager. So
yeah.
she had heard about how we were doing. She had heard about the income opportunity and how fast the market was growing. So she was super eager, and that's what we were looking for.
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal advice for anybody listening or jumping into the franchise or Dapper Tales in general. That hiring is tough, and like there's groomers are only so many, and it can be tough to hire, and it's probably the initial knee slap reaction to just get someone in that van as quick as possible, but it's you're sacrificing the long term to fill the short term. So
Right.
I think if anybody's listened to this interview, if you take away one thing from that, that's such an important piece. But as you continue to grow and learn, what's the future of this business look like for you and look like for your family, and what are your hopes and dreams for it for the even the people working within it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I talked about strategy and what we've talked about as a family, and we'd like to grow, multiple territories. And as long as the market will take it, we're going to continue to grow. I'd love to see 10, 12 vans in our portfolio. Would be exciting. And then, my wife and I would like to retire at some point. So it'd be
Right.
nice to be able to hand over an operation to my kids to be able to run, have some passive income, and then have a business that can support them as well, as we look at to go into retirement.
Gotcha, Shane. Well, I look forward to keeping up with you. Probably do a follow up on this. Maybe whether that's in 6 months or a year. But I appreciate your time and the advice that you've given here, and wish you continued success.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.